The wedding announcement that shocked Hollywood came on a hot July day in 1966. Frank Sinatra, 50 years old and one of the most powerful men in the entertainment, had married Mia Farrow, a 21-year-old actress barely known outside of the television show Peyton Place. The age gap wasn't just a number. It was a chasm that separated two completely different worlds. Frank was a legend who had conquered every stage, every audience, every challenge for 3 decades. Mia was a young woman, just discovering who she wanted to become. What happened during their 2-year marriage would create one of Hollywood's most spectacular disasters, proving that love isn't always enough to bridge the gap between different generations, different dreams, and different definitions of what marriage should be. If you love discovering the untold stories behind music history's most incredible moments, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Summer 1965. Los Angeles, The Meeting. Frank Sinatra first noticed Mia Farrow at a dinner party hosted by producer William Goots. Mia was there with her mother, actress Maureen O'Sullivan, who had been a star in the 1930s and 1940s. Frank was immediately captivated by Mia's ethereal beauty and unconventional spirit. At 20 years old, Mia had the kind of otherworldly quality that reminded Frank of the actresses from Hollywood's golden age, but with a modern sensibility that intrigued him. Mia, meanwhile, was mesmerized by Frank's legendary status and magnetic personality. She'd grown up hearing stories about the great entertainers of the 1940s, and here was one of them, paying attention to her. He was unlike anyone I'd ever met, Mia later recalled. He had this incredible presence, this power that filled every room he entered. I was completely fascinated. Frank began pursuing Mia with the same intensity he brought to everything else in his life. He sent her flowers, called her constantly, and invited her to his performances at the Copa Room in Las Vegas. The 29-year age gap was immediately apparent to everyone around them, but Frank and Mia seemed oblivious to the practical implications of their attraction. Fall 1965. The courtship. Frank's courtship of Mia was like a whirlwind romance from a 1940s movie. Expensive dinners, private jets, jewelry, and constant attention from one of the most famous men in the world. For Mia, who had grown up in relative quiet with her artistic family, Frank's lifestyle was intoxicating. She found herself swept into a world of nightclubs, celebrities, and luxury she'd never experienced. But even during their courtship, the fundamental differences between them were becoming apparent. Frank expected Mia to be available whenever he wanted to see her. Mia was trying to build her own acting career and wasn't always free to drop everything for Frank. Frank was used to people rearranging their lives for him, said a friend who knew them both. Mia was young and independent and didn't understand that. Frank expected total devotion. Frank's friends and family were concerned about the relationship from the beginning. His children from his previous marriages were particularly upset. Frank Jr. was only 5 years younger than Mia, and the situation felt uncomfortable for everyone involved. Dad was infatuated, Tina Sinatra later wrote. But infatuation isn't the same as compatibility. Mia's family was equally concerned. Maureen O'Sullivan worried that her daughter was too young and inexperienced to handle marriage to someone as complicated and demanding as Frank Sinatra. July 19, 1966, Las Vegas, the wedding. Despite the concerns of both families, Frank and Mia decided to marry. The wedding took place at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, with only a few close friends and family members present. The ceremony itself was telling. Frank wore a traditional tuxedo, while Mia wore a simple white dress that looked almost childlike next to Frank's formal attire. The contrast highlighted just how different they were in age, experience, and expectations. "It was surreal," recalled one wedding guest. Frank looked like he could have been Mia's father. Everyone was polite, but you could feel the tension in the room. The media reaction was immediate and harsh. Headlines around the world focused on the age gap. Sinatra, 50, marries girl, 21, and Frank's child bride. Frank was furious about the press coverage, but Mia seemed genuinely surprised by the negative reaction. She had seen their relationship as a love story, not a scandal. "I didn't think about the age difference," Mia said years later. "I was in love with this remarkable man. I thought that was all that mattered." August 1966, 1967, the honeymoon period. The first months of Frank and Mia's marriage were relatively happy, but the fundamental issues were always present just beneath the surface. Frank expected Mia to be a traditional wife, available to accompany him to events, supportive of his career, and focused primarily on their relationship. Mia, meanwhile, was at the beginning of her acting career and eager to take on challenging roles. The conflict came to a head when Mia was offered the starring role in Roman Polanski's psychological thriller, Rosemary's Baby. The role would require several months of filming and would establish Mia as a serious actress. Frank didn't want Mia to take the role. He felt she should be focused on being his wife, not on building her own career. For Frank, marriage meant partnership and support, and he couldn't understand why Mia would choose work over their relationship. Frank came from a generation where wives supported their husbands' careers, explained a close friend. He genuinely didn't understand why Mia wanted her own career when she was married to Frank Sinatra. Mia, however, was determined to establish her own identity as an actress. She loved Frank, but she wasn't willing to sacrifice her career dreams for anyone, even him. Fall 1967. The growing tension. The tension between Frank's expectations and Mia's ambitions grew throughout 1967. Frank was working on his own projects, including the film The Detective, and he expected Mia to be available to support his work. When Mia insisted on taking the Rosemary's Baby role, Frank felt betrayed. He had given her everything: luxury, status, security, and in his mind, she was choosing her career over their marriage. Frank took it personally, said a friend who witnessed several of their arguments. He felt like Mia was rejecting him by choosing to work instead of being with him. Mia, meanwhile, felt trapped and misunderstood. She loved Frank, but she also felt like he was trying to control her life in ways that felt suffocating. "I was 21 years old," Mia reflected years later. "I was just figuring out who I was, and Frank wanted me to be someone I wasn't sure I could be." Their arguments became more frequent and more intense. Frank's famous temper, which Mia had initially found exciting, now seemed frightening and overwhelming. Spring 1968. The breaking point. The crisis in Frank and Mia's marriage came to a head during the filming of Rosemary's Baby. Frank had been pressuring Mia to quit the film and accompany him on a trip to Europe, but Mia refused to abandon the project. Frank issued an ultimatum: choose the movie or choose the marriage. Mia chose the movie. Frank's response was swift and brutal. On November 16, 1968, while Mia was on set filming Rosemary's Baby, Frank's lawyer served her with divorce papers. The papers were delivered to Mia at Paramount Studios in front of cast and crew members. Mia was in the middle of filming one of the movie's most intense scenes when she was handed the legal documents ending her marriage. "It was humiliating," Mia said years later. "Frank could have handled it privately, but he chose to make it as public and painful as possible." Director Roman Polanski later described the moment. "Mia just stood there holding the papers, and you could see her heart breaking. It was one of the cruelest things I have ever witnessed." Frank's decision to serve divorce papers on set was seen by many as vindictive and unnecessary. Even Frank's friends thought he had handled the situation poorly. November 1968. The divorce. The divorce proceedings were swift but emotionally devastating for both Frank and Mia. Despite their differences, they had genuinely loved each other, and the end of their marriage felt like a failure for both of them. Frank handled the divorce the only way he knew how, by throwing himself into work and surrounding himself with friends who supported his version of events. He painted Mia as an ungrateful young woman who had chosen career over marriage. Mia, meanwhile, was devastated by the public nature of their breakup and Frank's apparent cruelty in how he ended their relationship. She completed Rosemary's Baby while dealing with the emotional aftermath of her divorce. "The marriage taught me something important," Mia said years later. "You can't love someone into being who you want them to be. Frank wanted a traditional wife, and I wanted to be an actress. We both got hurt trying to change each other." The financial settlement was relatively modest by Frank's standards. Mia received a small amount of money and kept some jewelry, but she didn't seek a large alimony settlement. She wanted to move on with her life, not be financially dependent on Frank forever. 1968, 1998. The aftermath. The failure of Frank's marriage to Mia affected him more deeply than he publicly admitted. Friends noticed that he became more cynical about relationships and more demanding of the women in his life. "The Mia divorce changed Frank," said longtime friend Jilly Rizzo. "He never again believed that he could have a relationship with someone significantly younger. He realized that the age gap wasn't just about numbers. It was about completely different life stages." Frank married Barbara Marx in 1976, choosing someone closer to his own age who understood his world and expectations. That marriage lasted until Frank's death in 1998. Mia, meanwhile, went on to have a successful acting career, starring in numerous films and becoming known for her humanitarian work. Rosemary's Baby became a classic, vindicating her decision to choose her career over Frank's demands. The two maintained a distant but cordial relationship in later years. They occasionally saw each other at Hollywood events and always remained polite, but the pain of their failed marriage never completely healed. In her autobiography, Mia wrote about Frank with a mixture of love and regret. "Frank was an extraordinary man who gave me incredible experiences and taught me about passion, music, and living life fully. But he also taught me that love isn't enough if you want fundamentally different things from life." Frank rarely spoke publicly about his marriage to Mia, but in a 1981 interview, he admitted, "I was too old for her, or she was too young for me. We wanted different things. I wanted a wife who would be part of my world. She wanted to create her own world. Neither of us was wrong, but we were wrong for each other." The legacy. The Frank Sinatra-Mia Farrow marriage disaster became one of Hollywood's most famous examples of how age gaps, different career priorities, and generational differences can destroy even the most passionate relationships. Their story highlighted the changing role of women in the entertainment industry during the 1960s. Mia represented a new generation of actresses who weren't willing to sacrifice their careers for marriage, even to someone as powerful as Frank Sinatra. The marriage also showed Frank's limitations as a partner. Despite his legendary charm and success, he struggled to adapt to changing social norms and expectations about relationships and marriage. The divorce papers served on the movie set became one of Hollywood's most infamous moments, demonstrating how personal relationships could become public spectacles in the celebrity culture of the 1960s. Today, the Sinatra-Farrow marriage is studied as an example of how generational differences, career priorities, and different definitions of marriage can create irreconcilable conflicts, even between people who genuinely love each other. The story serves as a reminder that successful relationships require more than attraction and affection. They require compatibility in values, goals, and life priorities. Frank and Mia's brief marriage proved that sometimes the most passionate relationships are the least sustainable, and that love, no matter how intense, can't overcome fundamental differences in what people want from life. Their story continues to resonate because it captures a universal truth. The most painful relationships are often the ones where both people are good people who simply want different things from life. If this story moved you, subscribe and hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to know that relationship failures don't always mean someone was wrong. Sometimes two right people are just wrong for each other. Have you ever experienced a relationship where love wasn't enough to overcome fundamental differences? Let us know in the comments how you've learned to recognize when compatibility matters more than chemistry.